Glenn Beck, Ed Meese, and Steve Bechtel. Of course, we know that Clarence Thomas's wife very much involved. The Koch brothers, billionaires they are, a major source of funding for the Tea Party, something they denied until video surfaced showing one Tea Partier after another reporting back to David Koch about their efforts.
5 years ago, my brother Charles and I provided the funds to start the Americans for Prosperity. And it's beyond my wildest dreams how AFP has grown into this enormous organization.
We have led the largest Tea Party in the state.
The largest tax day Tea Party in the nation on April 15th.
Hey folks, we've held 29 Tea Parties, organized dozens of Tea Parties.
This is a phenomenal success in my judgment.
Of course, the Tea Party was presented as a leaderless band of regular Joes fighting for transparency and against special interests, fighting for property rights and economic justice, and against large corporate control of government. Sounds good, right? The truth is they're being played by the very special interests they claim to fight. Case in point, future profits for the Koch brothers hinge on things like making sure cap and trade and climate change legislation don't happen. So it's something they get the Tea Partiers to lobby for, but reforming the corrupt banking system may not be so good for their business. And of course, who wants to deal with property rights when you can just control the bank and take whatever house you want? Why would you want a Tea Partier fighting for property rights? Crazy. We're joined now by our D.C. insider, Jimmy Williams. He's here to help us follow the money. I guess your invitation for that particular gathering was not in the mail, but is this as bad as it seems?
It's profligate. It's everywhere. Democrats started this. Let's be honest. And again, everybody's doing it, and that doesn't make it right. What this boils down to is these groups, corporations have the right to spend money how they want. That's their money. Private individuals have the right to spend money as they want it. That's their right. The Constitution says so. The Supreme Court now says so, right? So the question is where's the transparency? If I have to report every check that I write, why don't corporations have to do the same thing, or trillionaires and billionaires and millionaires? If a $25 contribution by Grandma Joseph in St. Louis, Missouri has to be reported by a campaign, why not 25 million? It's just there seems to be some sort of imbalance here, and I don't understand why that's there.
There's a hypocrisy that's developing among our politicians, both Republican and Democrat, where they'll come out in public and claim to be for transparency, claim to be for the solutions to problems like the ones that you're talking about, but when you look at their voting records, too many of them too often vote against every bit of transparency, whether it's the Coburn Earmark Transparency Database or the Disclose Act. Can you give us a little insight as to how prevalent that rhetorical versus voting hypocrisy is?
Yeah, that's a timely question. Last night, the debate in Illinois between Congressman Mark Kirk and State Treasurer Alexi Giannoulis, the question was asked of Congressman Kirk, do you support transparency or the disclosure of this money out there? And he said yes. That's interesting because back in the summer he voted against the Disclose Act, which would have done exactly that same thing. There's just no way to jive those two answers. I mean, they are the opposite of each other. It is like a magnet, and that's the two ends. So let's be honest. Kirk wants it one way. He voted one way. But in the debate that's live, where people have to see him publicly state his positions, he said the exact opposite. I don't know if it's like a John Kerry thing where he was for it before he was against it. Maybe he just doesn't know. Maybe he didn't know what he was voting on. I don't know. But what I do know is that you have politicians that, for the sake of politicking, for the sake of campaigning, for the sake of replacing Barack Obama in the United States Senate, that will say one thing but do another. That's why the American people are pissed off.
I guess, on the other hand, people say, what's new about that? Haven't politicians been saying one thing and doing another for a long time?
You know, some politicians do that. I choose to see politics. It's funny, one of your producers was asking me this earlier. I choose to see politics as a glass half full. I want to see the goodness in politics. I want to see politicians and policymakers do right by their constituents. There is always going to be that negative element, and that negative element inevitably is going to be because of money. The money is what is wrong with the system, and that's the biggest problem. A short-term fix could be just full disclosure. Let everybody,
cascade of sunshine.
Yeah, absolutely. Just put it out there. You want to spend $100 million and you want to influence legislation, put it out there, disclose it, let it be on websites, and let your constituents decide whether you're a good person or a good corporation or a good whatever, or a trade association or a labor union for that matter. But I don't think that's enough. I think that there should be elections that are financed by the American people, or by selling off the airwaves, which is the FAIR Act, which is both chambers bipartisan, and it needs to be.
I'm sure nobody wants to vote on that.
Well, it's been voted out of committee, so
all right,
you know.
Well, good.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be so pessimistic.
Don't be pessimistic.
Empty, you be glass half full.
That's right.
We'll see if we can solve this.
Yeah, I hope so.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Dylan.
Jimmy Williams talking, well, truth to power on the state of American politics, and more importantly, the American political process and system. We thank him, as always, for his time. Coming up on Hardball, Chris Matthews, a live interview with Alexei Giannoulis. Speaking of